Have you ever imagined that one piece of jewelry can revenge your death? One body was discovered entangled in a trawler's net off the coast of Tynemouth, Devon on 28th of July 1996. At first, there were no obvious clues to the identity of the deceased, until detectives noticed a prized luxury watch still fastened to his wrist. This single detail would unravel the mysterious fate of 51-year-old ex-soldier Ronald Platt. Hello everyone, I'm Aurora. Welcome to my basement where everything is a work in progress just like me. Today I will deep dive into the Rolex murder case, which shocked a whole nation and still continues to intrigue today. The 25-year-old Rolex Oyster, its stainless steel strap still intact, had been submerged for over a week. Yet, in a moment of eerie significance, detectives in the mortuary gave the watch a simple shake, and its self-winding mechanism sprang back to life. This unexpected breakthrough allowed police to construct a timeline of death, eventually identifying Ronald Platt through the watch serial number and service records. As investigators delved deeper, the trail led them to an enigmatic Canadian businessman, Albert Walker. Let's go now to Ronald Platt's background. Ronald Platt was born in 1945. He was a British citizen, television repairman who became ensnared in a chilling web of identity theft and murder. Originally from the UK, he had a normal life. Until one day, his life took a fateful turn when he befriended Albert Johnson Walker, a Canadian fugitive who had assumed the alias David Davis to evade prosecution for massive financial fraud. In 1992, Walker manipulated Platt into moving to Canada, convincing him to leave behind crucial personal documents, his driving license, birth certificate, and financial records. With this in hand, Walker assumed Platt's identity in the UK, seamlessly embedding himself into a new life, until the real Ronald Platt unexpectedly returned in 1995, setting off a chain of events that would lead to cold-blooded murder. Albert Johnson Walker was in Canada in 1946. He started his career as a financial advisor and eventually founded a bookkeeping and investment company named Walker Financial. Initially successful, his company attracted many clients who trusted him with their money. However, by the late 1980s, Walker had embezzled millions of dollars from his clients, leading to severe financial trouble. In 1990, rather than face legal consequences, Walker fled Canada with one of his daughters, then a teenager, leaving behind his wife and other children. He was one of Canada's most wanted fugitives, accused of fraud amounting to 3.2 million Canadian dollars. He was actually searched as well by Interpol. Life in the UK and identity theft came natural for Walker. Walker and his daughter moved there and they assumed false identities. Walker began going by the name David Davis and befriended Ronald Joseph Platt, a British man who wanted to move to Canada. Walker convinced Platt to relocate, using the opportunity to assume his identity in the UK. Walker then lived as Ronald Platt for several years, using Platt's identification documents to conduct business and avoid detection. Now we will go back to the timeline of the crime. In 1995, Ronald Platt returned to England, unexpectedly threatening Walker's cover. It started in summer 1996. It was a quiet summer morning on July 28, 1996, when a fishing boat named the Maverick set out along the serene waters of the Devon coast. The crew, experienced and well-versed in the rhythms of the sea, had no reason to expect anything unusual. But as they pulled in their nets, something unexpected emerged from the depths. A fully clothed body, eerily still, drifting just below the surface. The fishermen immediately radioed the authorities. When the police arrived, they observed that the body showed no signs of decay, suggesting it had not been in the water for long. But one detail stood out. The corpse was weighed down by an anchor tied to the man's belt. It was clear this was no accident. Someone had wanted this man to disappear. The police now had a mystery on their hands. The man had no identification, no wallet, nothing to tell them who he was, except for one item that remained untouched by the sea: a gold Rolex Oyster perpetual watch still strapped to his wrist. Unlike paper or fabric, a Rolex is nearly impervious to water damage. More importantly, Rolex watches contain a self-winding mechanism powered by the movement of the wearer's wrist. Once removed from a living person, the watch will eventually stop ticking, providing investigators with crucial clue: the exact time of death. Examining the serial number and service records kept absolutely wonderful by Rolex company, police traced the watch back to its original owner, Joseph Ronald Platt. But when they followed up, they hit a bizarre contradiction. Someone was still living under Platt's name. The trail led detectives to a man calling himself Ronald Platt, a well-dressed businessman with a calm demeanor. But something didn't end up. This Ronald Platt had access to bank accounts, property, and business dealings that didn't match the real Platt's history. Suspicion mounted when investigators uncovered a second name: David Davis. Then came the breakthrough. David Davis was actually Albert Johnson Walker, a Canadian fugitive wanted for embezzling millions. We'll continue with the motive of the crime and how a stolen identity escalated to murder. It became clear why Walker had murdered Ronald Platt. Years earlier, he had persuaded Platt to move to Canada, allowing him to assume Platt's identity in the UK. But when Platt unexpectedly returned in 1995, he became a dangerous loose end. Walker invited Platt on a sailing trip, struck him on the head, and threw him overboard, weighed down by an anchor. Had the body never surfaced, Walker might have remained undetected. But the Rolex, the unassuming witness in this case, kept time, leading detectives to the truth. Thus, justice was served. In 1998, Albert Walker was convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment in the UK. Years later, he was transferred to Canada, where he served additional time for fraud before being paroled in 2023. This parole allowed him limited freedom under specific conditions. However, in February 2024, the Parole Board of Canada denied him full parole, citing different concerns. As of now, Walker remains on day parole with restrictions, including a prohibition from working in the financial industry and from contacting his ex-wife and victims. Last but not least, we will deep dive into the psychological profile of Albert Johnson Walker, the mind of a fraudster turned murderer. Albert Johnson Walker was not just a financial conman, he was a highly manipulative and calculating individual whose crimes escalated from fraud to murder. His psychological profile aligns with characteristics commonly found in white-collar criminals who progress into violent offenders. Studies in criminal psychology suggest that financial fraudsters who escalate to murder often exhibit traits linked to psychopathy, narcissistic personality disorder, and antisocial behavior. Walker displayed classical traits of psychopathy. Thus, we will start dropping down some of the points. Superficial charm. He was able to gain the trust of both clients and victims, convincing them to hand over their life savings, or in Platt's case, his identity. Grandiose self-worth. He believed he was above the law, maintaining a sense of superiority even when under suspicion. Pathological lie. He wove intricate lies for years, successfully leading a double life as David Davis and then as Ronald Platt. Lack of remorse. Even after his arrest, Walker showed no visible guilt for defrauding victims of millions or for murdering Platt in cold blood. I will touch upon narcissistic personality disorder, considering this was most probably a factor that contributed to this escalation. Walker's need for control and admiration suggests narcissistic tendencies, which are frequently observed in high-stakes financial crimes. Key traits include manipulative tendencies. He carefully orchestrated a long-term deception, convincing Platt to leave behind his identity, only to later kill him when his return posed a threat. Sense of entitlement. Walker believed he deserved the wealth and power he stole, showing no regard for others' well-being. Lack of accountability. He never admitted guilt, blaming circumstances rather than acknowledging his actions. I will continue with antisocial personality disorder and escalation to murder. Financial fraudsters rarely escalate to murder, but Walker's antisocial traits made him an exception. Studies show that fraudsters with antisocial traits are more likely to commit violent crimes when their deception is threatened. Walker's actions align with this pattern. Calculated risk-taking. His fraud lasted for years, requiring careful planning and deception, but when Platt reappeared, Walker's solution wasn't retreat, it was escalation. Elimination in this case. Cold-blooded execution. The murder was premeditated and methodical. He was an organized killer. He lured Platt onto his boat, struck him, and disposed of the body with an anchor, a clear attempt to make him vanish. Inability to experience guilt. Even after his conviction, Walker showed no visible emotion, reinforcing his psychopathic and antisocial tendencies. And then the question remains, how come we start with financial fraud and leads eventually to murder? And criminal psychology research highlights that fraudsters who escalate to homicide often fit a pattern. They thrived on deception and control, which in our case, it's clear that Walker built his life around lies and manipulation. They lack a moral compass. Unlike con artists who eventually feel remorse, Walker displayed no concern for his victims. They become desperate when exposed. When Platt unknowingly jeopardized Walker's stolen identity, Walker chose murder over retreat, including this horrendous act, and thus we have an indication of extreme narcissism and psychopathy. Final diagnosis in our case, a conman without conscience. Albert Walker was a financial predator who evolved into a killer. His ability to manipulate, deceive, and ultimately kill without remorse suggests a blend of psychopathy, narcissistic personality disorder, and antisocial traits. His case is a textbook example of how white-collar crime, when fueled by personality pathology, can spiral into cold-blooded murder. The chilling truth of this case serves as a stark reminder. Trust should never be given freely. It must be earned through careful scrutiny. Never hand out your official documents and always question the motives of those who seek access to your identity. We all, at some point, gave our documents unknowingly and having a false sense of security, which probably doesn't exist. In this case, a healthy dose of skepticism isn't paranoia, it's self-preservation. In a world where deception can wear the mask of friendship, staying vigilant might just save your life. The Rolex murder remains one of the most astonishing cases of identity theft and murder, a chilling reminder that even in death, time tells all. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a good day or a good night. Bye.